Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me on today's live stream as we kind of recap Adam Hamilton's book, Words of Life. This time we are looking at the 9th chapter, the 9th commandment, the one that says not to bear false witness against our neighbors or against anyone. We're about ready to be finished with our study. We will have one more study next week, and then we will be through with the book. We meet on Tuesdays. We meet at 2 o'clock. We're doing so over Zoom. If you've not yet had a chance to join us but would still like to, know that you are welcome to join us. And if you don't get the email with the Zoom link, you can just let me know and I'll make sure to get it to you. But as we look at this commandment that tells us not to bear false witness, perhaps the first thing that it means, what it maybe means more than anything else, is to make sure that we are telling the truth in legal circumstances, to make sure that we are not ever committing perjury, making sure that our words are truthful, especially as it pertains to the outcome of someone else's life or well-being or their property or their finances. Both in the video that we got to watch and in the book, we got to hear kind of a heart-wrenching story from a man by the name of Daryl Burton, who was in jail for decades under the false testimony of someone else before having his name cleared. For this particular man, we see a story of forgiveness that didn't start that way, but ended up there, and a story that ended with him becoming one of the ministers at the Church of the Resurrection, Adam Hamilton's church. But on the face of this commandment, it means don't commit perjury, don't bear false witness against someone else, whether for your own good or out of spite of the other person. But as we've seen with all the other commandments, there's also a lot more that can be kind of gleaned from these words that kind of impact daily life, or at least life in a more broader sense than just what that main definition might mean for us. So one of the things that gets talked about in the book is politics and the 9th commandment. And what it kind of warns us against is from kind of hearing and believing anything that has been oversimplified or misinterpreted, that it might make for a little bit more work for us, but we want to make sure that we're hearing, even for those, especially for those that we disagree with, what it is that they are actually saying, and not to have an oversimplified version given to us, especially from someone who already disagrees with it, and certainly not a misinterpreted version of that particular statement or policy or whatever it may be. It's especially true that we want to do that, not just for our own good, but maybe doubly so if we are then going to pass along what it is that we have heard to someone else. We want to make sure that before we say, hey, have you heard that so-and-so thinks this, that what we're actually conveying is true to what the other person would say. One thing I have heard in the past is, see if you can come up with a way of describing someone else's opinion or position that you think they would actually agree with. Not that you're agreeing with it in this kind of formulation, but can you say back what it is the other person or the other party, the other politician, can you say back what it is they would say they are trying to convey in a way that they say, yes, that is what I'm saying? If you can't do that, then you're probably kind of caught in one of those oversimplifications or misinterpretations. Again, it's not always easy, and we certainly don't have time to do it for everything, but at least for the things that are most important. We want to make sure that we're hearing the right thing and passing along the right thing. Another thing that another area of our life that this commandment touches on is gossiping. Something that I'm sure everybody has been guilty of at some point or another. Something that has always been around, but is probably even worse now in an age of social media, where we're able to say things on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or you name it, without even having to be in the other person's presence. I heard someone who was being funny one time talking about how they were upset with someone and they said these ugly things to the other person's face right on Twitter. Not exactly how that works, but how it often plays out in the modern age. We say things sometimes on our Facebook posts, our pages, wherever, that have far-reaching consequences if what we are saying is not accurate. So we want to make sure that we're not saying anything about someone else that we wouldn't actually want to say if we were standing in their presence. And even if it is something that we would want to say in their presence, there's a little bit more maybe for this commandment to guide us here in just a few moments as well. One statistic that Adam Hamilton brings up, though, is that especially as we think about social media and as we think about those that are younger, teenagers, that about 32% of teenagers have said that they have had false rumors spread about them on social media. And that number is even larger. It is a much worse statistic if you look just at females, that about 39% of female teenagers would say that they have had false rumors spread about them online. This commandment to not bear false witness certainly applies in those situations as well. It's not something that we want to be about. Maybe in an even broader way of thinking about this verse, you can imagine it saying not to lie and not to be dishonest in all areas of life. There was a recent kind of admissions scandal to colleges that gets talked about in the study, where we've heard that some who were wealthy and powerful were able to have false applications kind of sent in for their children with inaccurate pieces of information on there, so that they can kind of take a spot that has been set aside for the admissions of new students, which means that they are dishonestly taking one of those spots that could have gone to someone else more deserving. Bearing false witness on our own account is also something that is discouraged by this commandment. There's also the question that gets kind of posed, and we won't go into a lot of it, but I will direct you to the book if it's something that you're more interested in, with the question of, is it ever okay to lie? Is it ever okay to be dishonest? And the short version of the answer is that, according to Hamilton here in the book, he would say, yes, there are times when lying and dishonesty are okay, but only when they are not bringing harm, but instead are bringing about life to someone. And in his example, he would talk about those who hid those who were Jewish during World War II from Nazi forces, and that if they were asked if they knew where anyone was, they would say no. If they were asked if they had been aiding anyone to escape the concentration camps, and they would answer no. That in those cases, this commandment is not saying, well, you should always tell the truth, and so you should say, yes, there are some people who are hidden in this particular area or that. That in those cases, lying is good and not prohibited by this commandment of saying, do not bear false witness. Kind of an interesting take as well is that Hamilton is saying that oftentimes there are people who have a very poor self-image, that they don't think of themselves as being someone of worth or of value, and that is also bearing false witness against ourselves, that it is not true, and that those are lies that come to us from the devil, just as sometimes lies come to us that want us to overvalue our own contributions, or that try to pump up our ego, and that those can be harmful. But the self-lies that say that we aren't valuable or have worth, those are damaging as well, and that we should not believe them. But as we come to kind of the end of the chapter and the end of our recap here together, as we always do, we also look at kind of the New Testament perspective, and we look at Jesus's perspective. We also oftentimes kind of flip the commandment to say, well, if there is this statement about do not do something, what is the opposite of that we can do, that we should do? And in this case, if we're not to lie to someone, if we are not to tear them down, if we are not to bear false witness against them, then the positive of that, the opposite of that, would be to speak words of encouragement, to speak words of grace, to speak words that build someone else up. So I do want to read just a few quick words from near the end of the chapter before we look at what Jesus might be saying to us in these words, just as we typically do at the end of these videos. But in the book, it says, our words are powerful. With them we can destroy or build up. The 9th commandment calls us not to do harm with our words, and Jesus in the early church compel us to use our words to bless, to build up, and to do good to others. By refraining from doing evil with our words and positively using our words to do good, we literally speak words of life. And that is the name of his book. They come from here in this chapter. It is beyond just what we hear in these words in this chapter, but it is here that kind of the title of the book is spoken. Well, I do want to share what Jesus might be saying to us about this 9th commandment. I know that you've been hurt by words others have spoken. I have been hurt too. But with your words, be careful not to harm others. Don't say anything about another that you would not say if they were listening in. Be truthful and be careful not to judge others. You don't know their hearts. Instead, use your words as instruments of healing, blessing, and love. As you build others up, you'll find that your own heart is filled with joy. Amen to that. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. God be with you, and bye-bye.